All right, so we were in practice session, so.
Nice background, Bill.
Thanks. A little much, right?
Yeah.
Is it too much? Because I can switch it.
It's fine.
No, I love it. It's all in.
Mhm. That's a nice way of putting it, Margot. I like that.
Yeah, I like the all in. This is
I'm a little,
the official, even though it's 7 o'clock in the evening, like I'm still all in. And this is still serious, and it's still coming from, an authoritative, sorry, I can't even speak, figure. So I think it's important. I like it. Keep it.
All right, so we're gonna get started. I believe we have all the attendees starting to roll in. And I'll kick it off now. I'm not actually able to see. I think they can see us now, so we'll kick it off. That's the beautiful thing of 2021 in Zoom. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Dan Lloyd, and I'm the director of the Babylon IDA's Economic Inclusion Initiative. The town of Babylon, the Babylon IDA, as part of their Babylon is Back initiative, launched this innovative program in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic to support and elevate NWBE entrepreneurs within the town. The Economic Inclusion Initiative is an innovative program that provides financial, technical, and legal assistance to existing and aspiring entrepreneurs who reside or operate their businesses within the town. A cornerstone of this effort is also a storefront development program that seeks to improve occupancy rates in underutilized business districts while also providing small business owners with affordable space needed to advance their businesses. It is also widely known that the Babylon Township is one of, if not the most diverse town on Long Island, and it is vitally important that its economic development programs reflect that. That is why this economic inclusion plan is a distinct pillar of the Babylon Back initiative. And I must say, the beautiful thing about this initiative is that traditionally IDAs do not focus or function in a way to support small businesses. It's usually on the larger development and economic development focus and sphere. So the town of Babylon and IDA leadership really took not only a chance, but were innovative and trailblazing in the fact that they can see that the IDA support can help not only small businesses, but minority and women small business, and also veteran business owners moving forward from the pandemic. So part of this conversation tonight was really just to bring experts in to help us better explain what exactly is an NWBE certification, the value of that certification, and how to use it moving forward in a 21st century economy, and as well as post-COVID-19 pandemic. So I have the distinct pleasure to introduce our moderator tonight, who is Mr. Bill Lindsay. Many of you might know him as the former Suffolk County legislator, and now Bill is also an integral part and a valuable part of our local Babylon IDA team. So Bill, welcome tonight, and I'll toss it off to you. Thank you.
thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. And just wanted to really take a moment just to recognize the Babylon IDA for all the work that they do within the town. My prior role with the Suffolk County Legislature, other than representing the 8th Legislative District, I was also the chairman of our Economic Development Committee. During my time there, I spent a lot of my effort went towards bringing and attracting and retaining new businesses to Suffolk County. And since I've left the legislature and joined the IDA here in Babylon, I've transitioned those efforts to bringing and retaining new businesses into the town itself. And that's important because that's where our jobs come from. That's what builds our economy. That's what helps support local businesses, whether they be restaurants or any of our retailers that are out there. It's a pleasure to work and live within the town of Babylon, and we want to do everything we can to make it a robust economy and keep it viable and keep it strong for the next generation as they come up. So it's been a privilege to work for the IDA, and get to work with great people like Dan, and then get to meet great people like Angelina, in which who I'm going to hand it off to right now. And she's going to go into what it takes in order to start up an MWBA business and how you go about that. And then we'll have some time towards the end where we can go through our questions and answers as well. So with that, Angelina.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Bill. My name is Angelina Ramirez, and I'm actually a director at McBride Consulting and Business Development. I specifically manage their MWBE practice, and I also focus on cannabis. But my career with MWBE spans a while. Actually, it started in 2010 when I was the executive director of a nonprofit in New York City focusing on economic development. So, you know, I've been very well versed not only in New York State certification, but again, during my tenure at McBride, I've really expanded for it to be nationally. So thank you so much for this opportunity to be a part of this panel. And yeah, thanks again. Margot?
Thanks so
Sorry,
much, Angelina.
Margo, your name is not up on the board there. It's up as Dan Ward. So it's Margo Cargill. And go ahead, Margo. Just wanted to make that clarification for everyone.
Absolutely, no worries. You know, in this virtual world, we're all doing the adjustments in action, and that's what I expect all of our MWBEs and potential MWBEs is to be able to bob and weave and shift. We've all had to do that, you know, throughout, you know, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and now post-pandemic world. So good evening, everyone. I'm Margot Cargill. I'm CEO of Titanium Links Consulting. We're a project-based public relations, media, marketing, communications, government affairs. Really, we do the integrated marketing route for large-scale, high-impact projects. So this entails projects that have any kind of social, economic, environmental, as well as health implications on the public. And a lot of the projects that we focus on are infrastructure, energy, wastewater treatment. We do offshore wind projects we're involved in right now. So it really runs the gamut. So anytime there's pitchforks at your door and there are projects that might have some kind of high touch points or high sensitivities, we get called into projects to manage pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction evaluations of the project so that we can push the important initiatives forward. And as an MWBE certified here in New York State, as well as New York City, Nassau County, Suffolk County, and newly certified in New Jersey, you know, I really hope to give you guys some perspective on what it is to kind of be in this industry and be able to maneuver in it. So I'm really happy to be with, you know, Angelina and Bill and Dan in this conversation and to be able to answer your questions.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Margo. And as you can tell, for those of you in the audience, you have two really good resources here. And I would encourage you to utilize this time as we go through the program. We'll get to the Q&A portion to really utilize those resources and to get as much information as you can, because we all know having to navigate some of these bureaucracies that exist at the state, the city, and even the federal level can be extremely complicated. And here are two professionals that can really give you the advice that you'll need that will be key and save you a lot of time and a lot of stress in doing that process. So the first question I have for the ladies would be, you know, if I were someone that wanted to register my business as an MWBE, what would be the first step and what would you do to begin that process?
I'll start. You know, generally when I talk to clients, I always like to level set, right, and provide them with the foundation of what MWBE actually means, right, and the different types. So, and the types are important, right, because there are public sector certifications, right? So, and Margo stated, you know, some of the ones, right, in New York State, whether it's the city, the state, the counties, you know, Port Authority, MTA, Jersey, you know, federal level, all those are considered public sector. but there are also private sector certifications as well. So if you are interested in doing any sort of business with Fortune 1000s, then I would absolutely suggest you get private sector. It works a little differently in that there are specific nonprofits that can certify you based on the group, a protected group that you are a part of. So whether you're LGBTQ, women, veteran, small business, disabled, there are specific certifications for those groups that then allow you to be able to do business in corporate settings, right? So once a business understands that, then they're able to better understand which ones they should leverage. I never tell a business, you should go after all of them. It really does pertain to their type of business. So I'll give you an example. This woman that I met a couple of months ago, and she owns a chocolate store, and she does wholesale and retail, but she also does business to business and business to consumer. So she can absolutely sell to big corporations, right? Maybe holiday gifts, etc. But she didn't know about those private sector certifications. And instead she got the state certification. Now, you know, she has been able to leverage it, thank goodness, right? Because there have actually been some nonprofits that have been interested in buying chocolate from her to give to some of their donors. But that the bigger opportunity with that particular type of industry lies in more of a private sector certification opportunity, Fortune 1000s. So, you know, when it comes to recommending certifications, it's important for the business to understand which certifications make the most sense to them, not only based on where they're located, right? So if they're in the city, then obviously they should get New York City certification, but also the type of industry that they're in.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, Angelina. And I remember when I first decided to kind of embark on the certification route, I'll never forget that, you know, one of the first steps as an entrepreneur, a new entrepreneur, is that you try to educate yourself, right? So you are listening to all the experts, you are attending all these webinars. At the time, it was all in person. And shout out to Nassau County, MWBE, like Office of Minority Affairs, because I sat in that session and I said, I am not in construction, and what does the government buy? I don't think that this is actually a certification that would be useful for my firm, which is in the service sector. So it's so important, just like Angelina said, is to be really specific about what services or what products you provide, because the government will buy they buy everything, yes, but the private sector also buys everything as well. So you have to understand your business model, and understanding your business model and really drilling down to what you do best and not try to be the jack of all trades is really, really critical, because that will allow you to then kind of maneuver and figure out whether or not the state, it's the city, it's the private sector, or it's the county certifications that are best for you. But you can absolutely, whether you're in a service sector, goods, commodities, or, you know, the gamut, they buy everything. It's just a matter of you understanding what your business model is, and also understanding what your clients are, who your major client base is, so that you can leverage it and really be focused and be intentional about that execution.
Yeah, I want to echo something that Margot said. You know, a good way to determine which certification you should get is to see what contracts are available for each one of those agencies that are certifying. And what I mean is, there's a website for New York State that has a listing of it's called Contract Reporter, very creative name, right? And so you can go onto Contract Reporter and you can see all the contracts, not only from the state, but also from the city and from different counties. And that'll help you determine which certification makes the most sense for you based on which agency or which jurisdiction has more opportunities. Because yes, New York State has, you know, a huge, $100 billion worth of, contracting, right? Whereas New York City only has $30 billion, right? So to, apply for the state, may make more sense for you because they have more contracts and which are valued at more money versus New York City. And then even NASA and Suffolk, right? Their budgets are even smaller when it comes to contracting opportunities. So that's also a good way for you to see which certification makes sense. Now, what I didn't say was there is a big distinction between public and private sector, particularly New York. New York has hard set-asides, which means that 30% of their contracts, procurement, must go to MWBEs, 15% to Ms, minorities, 15% to Ws, women, and some contracts even have another 6% for veterans, right? These are hard set-asides that the state and the city are obligated to meet. Private sector doesn't have that. They participate and have their MWBE programs more so for as their corporate social responsibility, to make themselves look good, to do PR, to put it on their website, but they're not obligated to do it. They don't have hard set-asides. Some companies today, like Chase and Bank of America, are self-imposing, hard set-asides, 5-10%, and that's lovely, right? That's nice. But most of corporate America doesn't have it. So understand that when you do get one of these private sector certifications, you'll have to network a lot and you'll have to market a lot. The state, they'll be posted and you could be proactive and find out about, or reactive, I should say, and find out about RFPs that are existing. So, yeah.
That's all great information. And Angelina, I'm glad you made a point about the private sector, because we are starting to see more private sector businesses be more socially conscious, be better corporate stewards to the communities in which they serve. And I've seen a number of RFPs of recent date where they are awarding more points to MWBE businesses. So they might not specifically set aside a specific amount of a contract that'll go toward it. They will give extra points to certified MWBE businesses. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a vital opportunity for business owners to have a little bit of an advantage. We all know how competitive the business world can be sometimes. For our smaller business owners, that this whole process might be really intimidating, even just going through the whole RFP process with government contracts or whether private contracts, how difficult would it be for, say, a sole proprietor who has whatever type of business you can think of, how difficult would it be for them to go through this process?
Yeah, I can go first, Margaret, if you want.
Absolutely.
Sure. So yeah, listen, and this data point I've been saying a lot. Last fiscal year 2021, New York City awarded $30 billion worth of procurement contracts. Out of that number, only 1.2 billion was allocated was with MWBEs, was contracts with MWBEs. That's less than 4% of their 30% goal. It's bad. And it's various reasons, right? Number one, unfortunately, small businesses, right, don't necessarily have the time or the resources or even the knowledge to respond to an RFP that can sometimes be 100 pages long, right? And then let's say that they do, take the time and spend the money to, respond to an RFP. The likelihood of them getting it is really difficult because they're competing against larger companies that have better economies of scale and better pricing. So listen, getting a certification is tough, but that's only the first step. You have to leverage it. And yes, responding to RFPs is a key point. But there are a couple of ways there's a couple of things businesses can do. Number one is network with the procurement officers at each one of the agencies. Again, I'll use New York City. New York City has over 100 procurement agencies, procurement officers. New York City has over 100 city agencies. And each one of those agencies has its own procurement officer. These people have what's called discretionary funding. They can award up to $500,000 to MWBEs without having to go through a formal MWBE or our bid process, right? I'm sorry, without having to go through a formal RFP or bid process. So that's wonderful news. Now, if I'm new to contracting with the city of New York, a procurement officer isn't automatically going to give me $500,000 project. What they'll do is they'll test me. They'll give me 25,000. If I do well, they'll give me 100,000. If I do well, then they keep increasing. And again, it's great because I no longer have to, respond to these RFPs that can be so lengthy and time consuming. I now can be given these contracts just based on the relationships with procurement officers. But that is one thing that smaller businesses can do. And, the city has, on their website, the list of each of the agencies and each of the procurement officers where you can reach out to them, sort of submit your capability statement. And that's a huge opportunity. Also, these small businesses can be subs under primes, those bigger companies that do get the contracts but need to meet that 30% goal. That's harder to do, right? Margot, I know she has a lot to say about that, but because that is networking as well, but it's one way that a business can leverage the certification.
Absolutely. And, one of the things is even though this is a webinar, one thing that I really want everyone that's out there right now is in the chat to actually give us as the panelists an idea of what your businesses are. Like, what is the name of your business and at least what the sectors are, so that we can actually gear some of the information that we're giving you towards your businesses and the structure that you are, because it will be helpful. But in general, when first-timers, the very first thing that will help you with what I was talking about before, about drilling down into exactly what you do, is making sure that you have a one-pager. And that's your capability statement. Start with that capability statement because it will really crystallize for you exactly what your selling point is, because it's almost like a resume for your business. If you're not familiar with it, there are a plethora of organizations that are out there to help you to put together what this document is, but it's basically your sell sheet. And it is everything that your business is in short and sweet one-pager. And once you get that done, then you'll really look at it and say to yourself, okay, if I was a procurement officer and I saw this one-sheeter, is this actually delivering and telling them exactly what I can do, short and sweet, and the first time you're coming out of the gate, you're being really concise, you're being really specific and really intentional about exactly what you do for a living. The next thing that I would probably tell you guys is, once you get one of the certifications or you're starting to go out there and get certified, just do all of them at the same time. Because to be honest with you, when you finally gear up for the massive task of getting certified, let's say for New York State, which that is the epsilon, that is like the holy grail. You want to get that New York State certification. And if you're going in there and getting Nassau County and Suffolk County, it means that you've already done the softball, which is you've already gotten all of your paperwork together, your financials, your capability statements, all of that sort of thing is within reach. So why not just do the Suffolk County, the Nassau County, the New York State, the New York City, the Port Authority, New York, New Jersey, try to do them basically all at the same time, because you will always have to pull those same documents at the same time. And then your timelines for the certification renewals will then all be within that same time frame. So it'll end up being easier in the long run if you just try to manage that so that you're not continually pulling that information at different periods of time in your business cycle. So that is another recommendation I highly recommend, because this certification process, which I keep going back to the government sector because it is the most arduous compared to the private sector certifications. So I'm going to tell you that honestly, very honestly, it's the survival of the fittest. The government sector, they really try to weed you out. And one of the best ways to do so is by, putting up these, paperwork. Government loves paperwork. They love being able to check the boxes. Just be really diligent about that. And if you already have all of the paperwork, all of the numbers right in front of you, do all of them at the same time if possible. Especially when you're starting off early, your numbers are smaller, which means that it's a less complicated process for you to get certified, because it is not, you don't have multiple partners. It's not a joint venture. It's not something that the state or Nassau County or Suffolk County or New York City or the Port Authority would say, oh, you guys you're big, you're bad, and you're doing a lot. And now it's more complicated to get you certified. So start early, be efficient, be really diligent about doing it, and just try to do it at the same time. That way, all of your certifications, April of whatever year it might be, every year that you have to recertify or that it's coming. And it will help you to be able to organize yourself and be more intentional about that kind of stuff. And lastly, show up. Show up. Because after you get that certification, there is going to be later on that we go into, I have my certification, now what? But not just get the paperwork done, but after you get the paperwork done, it's not just going to, come right to you. So I'm going to hand it back to Bill, because I don't want to overshoot it, and because I know that those questions are going to be coming down the line. I got certified, now what?
Those are all great points, Mario. We got our first question in the chat, and for those of you who have questions, if you could just type them into the chat portion, which you'll see the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. If it's not highlighted, just move the mouse, and you'll see the chat option will come up. But our first question is from Marlon. So Marlon, actually, is interesting, and I'm interested just in the answer to this one. Marlon owns a business called Comida de Cologne. It's a West Indian food business, and he's currently working out of a food cart. He is a minority, and he's also a disabled veteran. What do you think would be the best option for him to get certified as?
Where does he live?
Marlon, if you could answer that for us. Are you on Long Island or are you in the town? One So he's in the town of Babylon and one
Okay, so I would say I would get Suffolk and state, and he could get NMSDC, the National Minority Business Development Committee. So I will say this, right? Again, to be strategic, I always tell businesses, take a step back. Who truly is your client and who can be your client, right? And so, what are his long-term, short, mid, and long-term goals, right? So he's in the food industry. So there are a couple of ways of thinking about that. It could be doing, catering, right? Not only for schools, colleges, universities, even jails, right? We know how during the pandemic, a lot of restaurants were closed, but yet, they totally changed their business model, and they were delivering either to, they increased their delivery, or they were actually, I have a lot of friends who own restaurants in Manhattan, and they started getting grants from senior centers, from schools, and from a lot of entities that get financing from not only the city, but the state, right? So if his intention and if his interest is in doing some sort of catering, right, whether it's public or private sector, then I could see that being an opportunity. Corporate entities do catering all the time, but is catering in his business plan right now? Is he just B2C, business to an individual consumer? Then maybe certification doesn't make sense for him right now. But if his interest is in serving more larger scale hospitals, schools, corporate entities, then yes, certification does make sense for him. And because he's in Wyandanch, which is in Suffolk County would make sense. Because he lives in the state of New York, then New York State certification makes sense. And again, because he's a minority, then the NMSDC going after the private sector would make sense.
Angelina, would it, in Marlon's situation, since he's also a disabled veteran, would it also
Yes.
benefit him to register as a disabled veteran?
Absolutely. So he would get double, he would get certified as a minority and as a veteran. Those are two separate ones. What they don't let you do is double dip, right? So if like me, right, I have a business also, and I'm certified minority and woman. But if a business has a $100,000 contract, let's say, and they need to get MWBE certification for 30% of that, right? I can only get 15%. I can't get both. So know that, yes, you can get M, yes, you can get W, and yes, you can get veteran, but you can't necessarily for one contract get all of them. However, some primes, right, some government entities need an M. So if you're an M, right, then some only need a W. So you could use that one. Some only need a veteran, so you could use your 6% there, right? So they all work to your advantage. But yes, he is absolutely eligible to get, and also federal government also has for veterans, and the private sector also has for veterans as well.
And to take it, and just to kind of expound on that, myself, as a business owner, we're always looking to partner. And that's the big thing that I really want all of you to know, is that you can't, it's very difficult to scale your business alone. And what our communities really need is to understand that, something of nothing is nothing, and something of something is something. Especially when you delve into the MWBE and SDVOB, I apologize for the acronym, Minority and Women Business Enterprise and Service Disabled Veteran Owned Business. We need each other in order to actually scale our businesses. And if we are not going to the prime contractors to basically rely on the prime contractors to give us, decide whether or not they need an M, or whether they need a W, or whether they need an SDVOB. The real way that you can scale and to really be a prime contractor, because I'm currently a prime contractor, not just a subcontractor to major primes. And the way that I'm able to do so is by being open to partnerships. And so once you do that, now I can say, Angelina, I want to go after this big, this big $5 million contract that obviously requires an M, a W, and an SDVOB. I have an SDVOB, I have a W, and sometimes we switch, she's the W and I'm the M, whatever it might be, so that we package ourselves as a deal, and then we go after the larger contracting opportunities. So there's so much opportunity out there. It's just for you to be creative and for you to be open to those kinds of business structures. You didn't get into this because you were light of heart, going into entrepreneurship. You need to continue that pathway and that mindset to be able to grow your businesses, Because once you're able to kind of step outside your comfort zone, and yes, you might get burned a couple of times here and there minorly, but they're great learning lessons for you as you go on your path, you know, forward to growing your business. And in that that MWBE and SDVOB world, this is probably the safest sector that you can do partnerships, because you literally need each other to be able to execute on those contracts. So it's a little bit more, it's a little lower risk partnership arrangements than any other that, let's say, didn't have those kinds of requirements.
Great. Well, thanks, Margot and Angelina. That was a lot of great advice. Marlon, I hope you had a pen there and you were able to take some notes with all that information that was coming out of it. We have another question, and forgive me if I pronounce your last name wrong. It's Cheryl Lugazi. She's a psychotherapist, and her practice is Metamorphosis LMSWPC. She's rebuilding her practice in Suffolk County by expanding to open a wellness center in the town of Babylon. Welcome to the town of Babylon. She offers meditation, restorative yoga, Reiki, wellness center, along with psychotherapy. She recently registered in New York State as an WBE, and she wants to offer some of those services on and off site. And she's looking, her question is, what are the panelists' thoughts on who she should target within the town or within the county?
Yeah, so definitely the county, right? So whichever county she is in, I would absolutely leverage that. And I would, yeah, Suffolk, but I would also leverage WeBank, which is specifically for women, because corporate entities, as part of their health and wellness, initiatives, will hire and provide. Those are great services, right? Also, hospitals and insurance companies too will utilize her services, and especially that she's certified. So WeBank, private sector, I think would be huge for her, as well as Suffolk County.
And don't forget that, we're talking about MWBE. So the hospitals, let's say the county-owned hospitals, let's say our NASA University Health Center, that's a county property. So that is a count that requires those MWBE goals because it's state-owned. Let's say a Stony Brook, all of our SUNYs, all of our CUNYs, all of those kinds of entities. I know when you first start out, you don't realize how many entities actually are owned by government organizations. So the first step is to really understand what departments, because New York City, let's say the Department of the Aging, there's so many different departments that, let's say, would welcome, let's say, meditation or yoga or Reiki or wellness centers that are more, it's not only for people who need it currently, but it's also preventative care. So definitely taking a look at what entities, whether it's university sector, whether it's the health sector, whether it's the Department of the Aging, whether it's some of these nonprofit organizations that you don't realize are under the city or municipal umbrella, is the first step. So you have to make that list of all the sectors that are actually within your industry, but also the entities that are the ownership entities, like who owns what is the first step for everyone, whatever it is.
So Lucia, the only thing I would add to that would be within Suffolk County, you have the Department of Aging, which provides services for seniors in a few different locations, as well as on-site for them. And also you have the Department of Veteran Affairs, and your services could very easily be utilized for some of our veterans. Most people aren't aware that Suffolk County has the largest veteran population in the state of New York and the second largest in the country. So there's a tremendous veteran population throughout the county. And a lot of the services that you provide are definitely needed by those veterans. So those would be two thoughts that I would have for good places to start. And they're usually very easy to approach. Find the contact information, reach out to each one of those departments, and just ask them, is there an RFP process? If so, when does the RFP come out? And how do I get on your distribution list so that they'll send an email or a letter in the mail letting you know that the RFP is coming out and make sure that you're part of that distribution list.
And don't be afraid to ask whether or not there are any discretionary contracts. I know that's a word that we haven't really discussed, but those are the smaller contracts that, let's say when you're first starting out, don't necessarily have to go through that formal RFP process and formal and scary process. But as long as there's some of the departments also have pre-qualifications or just simple forms that if you have just a conversation with these departments, whether it's Suffolk County, Nassau County, and you actually introduce yourself, get familiar, like Angelina said, with the procurement officers, you'd be surprised. There are opportunities out there. It's just that you have to do your due diligence.
The next question we have is from Celicia Cargill. Celicia has a really interesting business. It's called Authentic Artwork. She offers art and team building workshops for mural paintings and office artwork. She is currently certified, has 5 certifications, and she hasn't had any business opportunities come her way to get certifications yet. But she's asking if you have any advice for her, given the unique business sector that she's in.
Yeah, you know what? Again, I would, well, MTA, you know, I have a really good friend and she's an artist. So she's done some work for the MTA. Her work is actually in the subways of New York City. And she's also done some work for Columbia University, as well as for some banks. So right there, banking is definitely private sector. So as a woman, she can get WeBank. If she's a woman of color, then she can get NMSDC. If you're Columbia or any sort of university, for sure that's state. But then, you know, MTA, that's another certification that she could get. But in the end, like I said, the first step is getting the certification. The second step is definitely leveraging it. So whether, you know, right now the state is having their WBE Expo. So attending expos, going to networking events, and all of the agencies have them multiple times a year, as well as the county, I know. So it's an opportunity to meet those people that make decisions. But also, and Margot touched about this, the marketing piece, having your capability statement, which is just, you know, a one-page resume for your business, and emailing that, and you know, to the different procurement officers. It takes work, and then going to contract reporter, looking for RFPs. You know, and another opportunity is nonprofits. You know, a lot of nonprofits, yes, get monies from, you know, private citizens, but a lot of them get money from government, whether it's New York City, whether it's the state or even the federal government, and they have budgets that they can allocate to this kind of project. I used to work for, I was on the board of an arts organization in Northern Manhattan. It's actually called the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance, and they received budgets from New York City, and they had a project that was ongoing for 5 years actually, where it was mural painting, and it was working with the Department of Education to have the kids kind of draw murals. So right there, that's another certification, one with the Department of Education. So again, it's you know, the certification is the hard part, but eventually you're just going to have to think about being strategic. And where would my services make sense? Who is the appropriate contact person? And what are the networking opportunities I can leverage to meet these people. But yeah, I could see her WeBank, I can see her NMSDC, I could see her definitely MTA and Department of Education as well.
And the thing that I want to remind everyone is, you know, she says that she has 9 certifications. And one of the things that I have to reiterate is that just because you have your certifications, they are not, the opportunities are not just going to fall out of the sky like manna from heaven, unfortunately. Unfortunately, that is not how it works. You still will have to hustle, you will still have to get on the grind, and you will still have to show up, because that's exactly what I had to do. And I had to get creative. Angelina, you're absolutely right. The MTA is one of the best examples of, you know, an organization that you might not think that they might buy your services or your goods, because again, I'm in public relations, I'm in communications, I'm in marketing, you know, we do integrated marketing and all of that jazz. It's like, don't they already have internal people that handle that? Yes, they do. But I was still kind of intentional about wanting to work in the sector of the construction, the engineering, these large, huge projects that had, you know, massive budgets and just massive impact on the public at large. So I showed up to the site visits, and they looked at me like, oh, you know, what do you do? What engineering firm or what construction firm do you work for? I said, I don't. I do this. This is my business card. All the prime contractors were right there at the site visit. It's really important for you guys to think outside the box when it comes to what your service offerings are, because, for instance, the MTA just spent millions of dollars on the Long Island Railroad third track project is the project, one of the projects that I'm on. And we're doing several station renovations. And in those stations, they are commissioning artwork for each of those stations. So it's interesting. Again, you would never think that, you know, a transportation project would need an artist, but that's why reading and researching and knowing what's going on in your community specifically. I think the best way to start with a lot of this is knowing what is, making sure you're well informed of the public and private partnership projects that are going on right in your backyard, because that's probably one of the best chances that you have of an introduction to, let's say, a prime contractor or a department head that you might not necessarily have anywhere else, because it's right in your backyard. Long Island Railroad third track, that's like, I live in Rockville Center. It's like, wait a minute, that's right in my backyard. Let's go check it out. Let's find out what's happening so that you can see whether or not there is an opportunity for you. The second thing is if you have 9 certifications, make sure that in all of those contracting systems, that all of your codes are correct. I can't tell you how many times people have told me that they're not getting opportunities, and then when another individual, a specialist like Angelina, takes on them as a client, they'll say, you know, what are your codes, you know, that are associated with you in that particular contracting system. So make sure you check to make sure that the codes that are affiliated to you are correct. And then, you know, last but not least, when it, like Angelina says, when it comes to the creative arts, services, things like that, see whether or not the nonprofit sectors or the private sectors are embarking on any new construction or new projects that you think might include art or have some kind of art implications on the building, especially when it's public facing.
The only thing I would add to that too, with the Port Authority from New York, with all the renovations, they control the airports, with all the work that's going on at LaGuardia and JFK, there's always art projects that are part of that, so you might want to reach out. And it is difficult, a lot of bureaucracy to have to deal with all these different agencies, but your efforts will definitely bear fruit because of the certifications that you have. It will definitely give you an advantage in applying for some of those contracts.
Before, I want to just quickly go over something that Margot said, because and this is actually quite important. The codes that she's referring to, right, they're called NAICS codes. And, you know, generally, right, when you do your taxes, right, there's this 6 code number that is associated with your industry, right? So Margot, as being, you know, in public relations, there's a code specifically for that. Her being in marketing, there's a specific code for that, right? For what I do, I have a specific code. So your code, right, is very much, you know, when you apply for certification, they ask you what code you are, right? And there's a website, naicscode.com, and you could find, right, which code it is based on your industry, and you apply. Then whoever the agency is confirms that that is your code based on the kinds of invoices that you've submitted, based on your education, based on your knowledge. But again, to Margot's point, it's extremely important that you have the right codes, because once you get certified and you're in the system, the way in which procurement officers search for or look for vendors that they need, it's based on those NAICS codes. So if you have them incorrectly, or your profile doesn't even have that your NAICS code, they're never going to communicate to you. You're never going to get an email. You're never going to get a call. You're never going to get a job, right? So it is very important that when you apply, you apply with the correct NAICS code. And when you look at your code, whether it's on the New York State certification page, New York City certification page, et cetera, that your NAICS code is present. Because again, that is how they search for you, and that's how they find you, and that's how they send opportunities for contract for you, or to you, I should say.
Great point. And Celicia put in the, if you haven't seen it in the chat, she's going to check on that to make sure, especially given the broad base. Before you could be certain, could be listed as a building painter because it's such a unique space in what you do. So especially in your example, it's really vital to make sure you put it correctly. We have a few more minutes. If anybody else has any questions that they want to throw into the chat board, we'll gladly answer those. I am going to, as we wait to give people a little bit more time to do that, I'm going to put up my email address to everyone. If you have any questions, and I'll make a very brief plug for the IDA. We are, if you're looking to purchase a building or even to lease a property within the town for your business, and you're looking to move it into the town of Avalon for the first time or within the town, please reach out to us. There's all kinds of tax incentives that you may qualify for, depending on the type of business and where you're looking to locate it. And we're happy to sit down and talk through that whole process with you and the benefits that you might be able to qualify for, as well as connect you with some other different type of assistance within the town. We're a nonprofit, so there is a fee that the IDA charges, but it's nominal compared to the benefits that you get from it and from our services. So we try to act as a resource for all the businesses within the town. We've done a lot of outreach with all the different COVID changes that have happened and occurred. We really are here to assist the town, businesses within the town, and try to help them in any way we can to be more successful. So, Dan, I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to turn it back to you. Thank you, our panelists. I really appreciate Margot and Angelina for your offering your expertise this evening. That's great, and you're a wealth of knowledge. So really want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here this evening. Dan?
Thank you, Bill. And on behalf of the Babylon IDA and the Economic Inclusion Program and staff, I do want to extend thanks to Angelina and Margot for their time and their expertise. I can tell by some of the responses that these were great insight and value brought to what we're looking to accomplish is really just to increase the amount of NWBE certifications within the town of Babylon. That is the goal and the vision for the IDA, this IDA initiative. So we're going to be doing many more of these as well going into 2022. Hopefully we'll be able to start doing some in person. We'll see how that looks. It's not looking too good right now. It looks like we're going a little backwards, but the beautiful thing though is that this will be recorded. So, you will have access to this. I'm going to leave my email right here as well, because if you would like, you can email me and become a part of the economic inclusion cohort so that you can get updates with our newsletter, updates about some of the programs and workshops that we have coming up, and just resources that we're constantly getting information about. And we like to share that with those that are part of our cohort. So my email is right here. It's dloyd.tob@gmail.com. Again, thank you so much, Angelina and Margot. I don't know if you want to say any last words.
No, thank you again for the opportunity, and happy holidays.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And good luck 2022. Go 2022, please.
Yes.
Let's go get it. Can only go the only place that we can go is up from here. So I'm very bullish on business. I'm very bullish on life. So God bless everyone and happy holidays to all.
Love it. Yes, it's the holiday season officially.
Yes.
So, everyone enjoy. Thank you. Have a blessed evening.
And happy holidays, everyone.
Bye.